The night my grandmother whispered, "Never sell this house," the walls seemed to breathe with her words. Rain slid down the cracked windows of the old place like tears that had been waiting for decades. Everyone in my family hated this house. They called it cursed, useless, a burden dumped on me because I was the soft one, the granddaughter who asked for nothing, the one who stayed quiet, the one who stayed behind. They didn't fight me for it when the lawyer read the will. They didn't even look up. An abandoned house on the edge of town, cracked floors, faded paint, a roof that sighed every time the wind changed direction. They smiled when it was given to me. I should have known then. I had been living with my grandmother for years before she died. Not visiting, not calling once a week. Living, feeding her, cleaning her, carrying her fragile body to the bathroom when her legs stopped listening to her. Holding her hand through nights when pain made her beg for morning. No one else came. My brothers were busy. My sisters had their own families. My cousins remembered her only on holidays when there was food. But when the illness took her breath and time became something we counted in hours, it was me she called. Not her children, not the ones who shared her blood. Me. One night, barely able to speak, she grabbed my wrist with a strength that didn't match her body. "Promise me," she said. Her eyes weren't weak. They were sharp, afraid, alert. "Promise me you won't tear this house down." "I won't," I said, thinking she meant memories, feelings, grief. She shook her head slowly. "They'll come when they smell gold." I didn't understand. I thought it was medicine talking. Pain, fear of being forgotten. She died 2 days later. The house became mine. Alone, I walked through it after the funeral. The silence was different now. Heavy, like the walls were listening, waiting to see if I would keep my promise. I decided not to sell it, not because I loved it, but because it was all I had left of her. I borrowed money, took a loan, hired a small crew to renovate instead of demolishing it. Everyone laughed when they heard. "You're rebuilding trash," my brother said. "You could have sold it and moved on," my sister added. "Don't get emotional over bricks," one cousin mocked. I smiled and stayed quiet. Renovation began on a Monday. On Thursday, the house spoke back. It started with a sound, a hollow knock behind the west wall, too deep to be pipes, too slow to be wood settling. The worker knocked again. Hollow. We broke part of the wall. Behind it wasn't rot. It was stone. Old, deliberate, hidden. My chest tightened as memories rushed back. My grandmother sitting in that exact corner every evening, her chair never moved, her eyes always watching the same wall. She had been guarding something. We cleared more bricks, and there it was. A sealed wooden door, smaller than a normal one, with a rusted metal lock carved with symbols I'd never seen before. Not decorative, intentional. My hands shook. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a forgotten storage space. This was hidden. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat on the floor of my room holding one of my grandmother's old prayer books, the same one she never let anyone touch. I don't know why I opened it, but something inside me said to look. Between 2 yellowed pages, a folded paper slid out. 3 words, "Trust no one," and below them, drawn faintly, a symbol identical to the one on the lock. My stomach dropped. If you're feeling this moment already, stay with me and subscribe, because this story only gets darker from here. The next morning, the contractor refused to continue work near that wall. "Something's wrong," he said. "I don't like it." By evening, a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years called me. "I heard you found something in the house," he said casually. My blood ran cold. I hadn't told anyone, not a soul. That's when I understood what my grandmother meant. They weren't coming for me. They were coming for what she hid. And whatever was behind that door, it was valuable enough to wake the dead greed of an entire family. That night, standing alone in the dim hallway, I placed my hand on the hidden door and whispered the words she once whispered to me. I kept my promise. Behind the wall, something clicked. And somewhere far away, my family was already moving toward me. The first time I heard the click, I froze like the house had whispered my name. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. Just a faint, metallic sound from behind the hidden door, like a lock remembering it still had a job to do. My palm stayed pressed to the wood, my breath shallow, my heart punching against my ribs. I told myself it was nothing. But deep down, I knew the truth. This house wasn't empty. It had been waiting. The next morning, I woke to 3 missed calls and a text from my sister, Kayla. "Hey sis, heard you're renovating grandma's place. That's so sweet. We should all come by sometime." My stomach tightened. No one in my family used the word sweet unless they were trying to hide something sharp. I didn't reply. I drove straight to the house anyway because the only thing scarier than my family showing up was not knowing what was behind that door. The contractor, Mr. Henson, was already there, standing outside with his arms crossed like the house had offended him personally. "I'm telling you," he said the moment I stepped out of my car. "I've renovated places older than this. But that wall, that door, it's not normal. Can you open it?" I asked. He shook his head. "Not with me on the hook. If it's illegal storage weapons, God knows what, I'm not losing my license." "It's my house," I said quietly. "And you're a good girl," he replied, softer now. "Which is why I'm warning you. Some secrets were buried for a reason." I didn't argue. I walked inside alone. The hallway smelled like wet wood and dust, but there was something else under it now, something metallic, like old coins, like iron, like time. I stood in front of the hidden door again. The lock was old, but not random. The symbol carved into it looked like a twisted infinity sign with a line through it. The same symbol on the paper from Grandma's prayer book. Trust no one. I pulled the prayer book from my bag and flipped through it carefully. I hadn't looked beyond that note. I hadn't dared. This time I did. On the inside cover, written in shaky ink, was a sentence that made my throat go dry. "If you find the door, you already know why I chose you." My eyes blurred. I sat on the floor right there, the cold boards pressing into my legs, and I remembered her hands, thin, trembling, still trying to wipe my face when she thought I was crying from stress. I remembered how she'd apologize for being heavy when I helped her to the bathroom as if love had weight. "I'm sorry," she'd whisper, ashamed. "No," I'd tell her. "You raised us, let me do this." No one else had heard those whispers. No one else knew how many nights I slept on the floor beside her bed because she was too weak to call out if she fell. They weren't there when she screamed from pain and begged me not to leave her alone. But now they were suddenly interested in the house. In me, in whatever the house was hiding. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my brother, Ethan. His voice was friendly in a way that made my skin crawl. "Hey, Ava, how's the renovation? You know, if you need help financially, we can talk." I almost laughed. He hadn't offered help when Grandma needed medicine. He hadn't offered help when I was drowning in hospital bills. But now he wanted to talk finances. "I'm fine," I said. Cool, he replied quickly, too quickly. "Just keep me posted. Family should stick together, right?" Family, that word had been used to excuse so many betrayals. When the call ended, I stared at the hidden door like it was staring back. The click happened again. This time I felt it in the floor, a vibration, a mechanical shift. The lock wasn't dead, it was responding. To what? I leaned closer, noticing something I hadn't seen before, 3 tiny grooves carved around the lock. Like it wasn't meant for one key. It was meant for three keys, 3 steps. My hands shook as I ran my fingers over the grooves. Then I noticed a faint scratch on the floor beside the door. A line carved into the wood, almost invisible unless the light hit it right. It pointed toward the hallway closet. I stood up slowly, my heart pounding. The closet was one of the only places I hadn't touched. It still smelled like Grandma's lavender soap and old coats. I opened it. Dust floated in a thin beam of light. Inside, hanging on the back wall, was an old wool coat that belonged to Grandpa. Everyone said he died peacefully in his sleep. I never believed it, because Grandma never spoke of that night without her voice breaking. I reached into the coat pocket. My fingers touched something hard, metal. I pulled it out, a small brass key worn smooth like it had been held 1,000 times. Tied to it was a strip of paper. 2 words written in Grandma's handwriting. First breath, I didn't understand, but my hands were already moving. I walked back to the door and slid the key into the first groove. It fit perfectly. The moment it turned, the air inside the hallway changed, colder, heavier. Like the house had exhaled a secret it had been holding too long. Somewhere deeper inside the wall, a second click echoed, longer, lower, like gears shifting. My throat tightened. I tried the door, it didn't open, but it wasn't supposed to. 3 grooves, 3 keys, 3 steps. I backed away, breathing hard, and that's when my phone buzzed again. A video call request. From Kayla. I didn't want to answer, but something told me to. I tapped accept. Kayla's face filled the screen, smiling too wide, hair perfect, like she was calling me from a commercial. "Ava, there you are, we were just talking about you." The camera shifted and my stomach sank. Behind her on a couch sat Ethan, and two cousins, and my aunt grandma's own daughter who hadn't visited once during her final year. They were all together, already gathered, like a pack. Kayla laughed lightly. So, we heard you found something interesting in Grandma's house. My throat went dry. Who told you that? Ethan leaned forward, voice calm, eyes sharp. People talk, contractors talk. You should have called us, Ava. I didn't find anything, I lied. My aunt's expression changed instantly. The smile dropped, her eyes hardened. Don't play that game, she snapped. That house belongs to all of us. Your grandmother was old and confused when she made that will. I felt something inside me crack, old and confused. The woman who knew every detail of every person she loved. The woman who could barely speak yet still warned me with clarity. She wasn't confused, she was protecting me. No, I said quietly. She wasn't confused, she chose. Kayla rolled her eyes. Ava, don't be dramatic. We're not trying to fight, we're just family. Ethan's voice lowered. Open the house for us this weekend, we'll come by, make sure everything's handled properly. Properly, like I was a child, like they were in charge. I looked at their faces on my screen, people who couldn't carry grandma to the bathroom but could suddenly carry entitlement. My hands trembled but my voice stayed steady. No, silence. Then Ethan smiled, not friendly, not warm. A warning, you don't want to do this the hard way, he said. The call ended, my legs felt weak. I sat down on the floor again, clutching Grandpa's key like it was the only weapon I had. Then beneath the fear a new feeling rose, anger. The kind that tastes like metal, the kind that makes your hands stop shaking. My grandmother had hidden something in that house for a reason, and she had given it to me for a reason, not to make me rich, to reveal the truth. Because suddenly the puzzle pieces started fitting in my head. The secrecy, the warnings, the way she forced me to keep the old house instead of selling it. She wasn't just hiding a treasure. She was hiding something from them. And whatever it was, they were terrified I would find it. I stood and walked back to the hidden door. I pressed my ear against the wood. For a moment I heard nothing. Then, so faint I thought I imagined it, something moved. Not a gear, not a lock. A sound like a paper sliding across stone. Like something inside that room was awake. If you're still here, subscribe because the next key isn't in a pocket. It's buried in a memory I tried to forget. Outside, a car door slammed. I froze. Footsteps approached the porch. Then the front doorknob turned. And I remembered with a sick drop in my stomach I hadn't changed the locks yet. The doorknob didn't turn all the way. It stopped halfway, like whoever was outside was testing how far they could go before being noticed. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Every warning my grandmother ever whispered crawled back into my bones at once. Then the knocking came, soft, polite, fake. Ava, a man's voice called. It's me, Henson, contractor. Relief washed over me so fast it almost made me dizzy. I walked to the door but didn't open it right away. I looked through the narrow crack. It was him, alone. I unlocked the door just enough to speak. You scared me, I said. He didn't smile. You should be scared. My stomach dropped. He stepped inside quickly and shut the door behind him. His eyes moved through the hallway, stopping at the hidden wall like it was calling him by name. You didn't tell anyone, he said quietly. But someone followed me here. Cold crept up my spine. Who? He exhaled slowly. Your cousin, the tall one, he offered me money. I felt sick. He wanted to know what we found, wanted pictures, details. And I asked. I said no, he replied, because I've seen what happens when families smell buried wealth. It never ends well. My legs weakened. I leaned against the wall. They're coming, I whispered. He nodded once. You need to be careful. And you need to be fast. Fast, I glanced at the hidden door. One key, I said. There are 3. His eyes widened slightly. Then whatever's behind that door was never meant to be opened quickly. When he left, I locked the door and slid down to the floor. My hands shook again, but this time not from fear, from memory. First breath, the note had said. I closed my eyes, and suddenly I was 8 years old again. I was sitting on the bathroom floor, my legs crossed, counting the cracks in the tiles. Grandma's voice floated through the steam. Breathe slowly, she told Grandpa, in through the nose, out through the mouth. I remembered the smell of medicine, the sound of the window rattling, the way Grandpa's breathing sounded wrong. That night wasn't peaceful. That night was panic. I stood up so fast my head spun. I rushed to the bathroom at the end of the hallway, the one Grandma insisted on keeping exactly the same even when everything else aged. The mirror was old, clouded, the sink chipped, but the window was newer than everything else. Too new. I ran my fingers along the frame. There it was, a small notch carved intentionally. I pressed it. The frame shifted. My breath caught as a thin compartment slid open, hidden inside the wall. Inside it was a small glass vial, empty, and a folded piece of paper. My hands trembled as I opened it. Second breath, it read. Truth hurts more than silence. My heart pounded so loud I could hear it in my ears. Truth, about Grandpa, about the night Grandma never spoke of without crying, about why she never trusted her own children again. I felt sick as realization set in. What if the treasure wasn't gold first? What if it was proof? I clutched the paper and stumbled back into the hallway. That's when my phone rang again. This time it wasn't family. It was an unknown number. I shouldn't have answered. I did anyway. Stop digging, a man's voice said calmly. I froze. Who is this? You're not as alone as you think, he replied. And your grandmother didn't die without enemies. My heart slammed against my ribs. What do you want? A pause. To give you a chance, he said. Lock that door, walk away, or everything you love will turn against you. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, my hands numb. That's when I noticed something new. The hidden door was open, not fully, just enough to breathe. I hadn't touched it. I stepped closer. The smell hit me first. Not rot, paper, old paper, and metal. The door creaked as I pushed it wider, revealing a narrow stone staircase descending into darkness. Every instinct screamed at me to run. Instead, I picked up a flashlight and stepped inside. The walls were lined with shelves, boxes, ledgers, and at the center of the room, a steel chest. I opened the nearest ledger, names, dates, amounts. Transactions written in careful handwriting. Grandma's handwriting. I flipped pages faster, my breath shallow, then I saw them, my aunt's name, my uncle's, large sums of money, signatures, and a final note written in red ink. Paid to keep quiet? My stomach twisted. This wasn't inheritance. This was evidence, evidence of betrayal, of crimes buried deeper than the house itself. My grandmother hadn't hidden wealth, she had hidden the truth. The chest sat unopened, heavy with promise and threat. I placed my hand on it and felt something taped to the underside. Another note, third breath is yours to choose. Footsteps echoed above me, voices, my family, they were inside the house. If you're still listening, subscribe, because from this moment on, every choice becomes a weapon. I shut the ledger, heart racing. The final key wasn't metal, it was a decision, and whatever I chose next, it would burn bridges forever. The voices upstairs didn't sound angry at first. They sounded cheerful. That was the most terrifying part. I stood frozen at the bottom of the stone steps, my fingers pressed against the cold steel chest, listening as laughter echoed through the house my grandmother had protected with her life. Wow, it still smells the same, Kayla said. Creepy place, one of my cousins laughed. Where's Ava? My aunt asked too casually. They were acting like guests, like they hadn't threatened me. Like they hadn't circled this house the moment they sensed something valuable breathing inside it. I quietly closed the hidden door from the inside and turned off my flashlight. Darkness wrapped around me, thick and heavy, but my eyes slowly adjusted. The room wasn't meant to be comfortable. It was meant to be secret. My phone buzzed. A message from Ethan, we're inside, don't make this awkward. My jaw tightened. I remembered my grandmother's voice again, weak but steady, telling me that silence could be louder than screams. I didn't answer. I opened the steel chest. Inside, stacked with unnatural precision, were velvet-lined trays holding gold bars, antique coins, raw gemstones, sealed envelopes, and documents tied with twine. Not messy, not rushed, planned, years of planning, billions easily. My breath caught, not because of the wealth, but because of what sat beneath it all. A thick brown folder, labeled in my grandmother's handwriting. For when they come? My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were photocopies of bank transfers, offshore accounts, property deeds under false names, recordings transcribed word for word, and a handwritten timeline detailing how my grandfather's business empire had been slowly drained by his own children. One page stopped my heart. A medical report, my grandfather's, cause of death, cardiac failure. But stapled behind it, another report, hidden, unofficial, toxicology, sedatives found in his bloodstream, not prescribed. Not accidental, my vision blurred. Grandma hadn't just been betrayed, she'd been silenced. Footsteps sounded closer overhead. A cabinet opened. A drawer slammed shut. They renovated, Kayla said. Check the west wall. That's where she used to sit all the time. My stomach dropped. They were getting closer. I quickly photographed every document, every ledger page, every name, sending them to a cloud account I'd created the night before. Grandma hadn't raised a fool. I slid the folder back into the chest and locked it. Then I noticed something else, something new. A small envelope taped to the inside lid, addressed to me. Ava, it read. If you're reading this, they already know. Inside was a handwritten letter. I loved them once, I raised them, I trusted them, and they repaid that love with poison and patience. I didn't hide this for revenge, I hid it for protection. Yours. Tears slipped down my face silently. Upstairs, a floorboard creaked closer to the hidden wall. Ava, my aunt called again, stop playing games. I climbed the steps slowly, quietly, my heart hammering with every breath. When I reached the hidden door, I listened. Silence, then a loud bang. They were hitting the wall. You hear that? Ethan said. Hollow, just like I told you. Rage surged through me so hot it burned away the fear. They hadn't come to check on me, they'd come to take. I stepped out from behind the wall. I'm here, I said. They all turned at once. Their faces shifted, surprise, relief, calculation. Kayla rushed toward me, arms open. Oh my God, we were so worried. You didn't answer your phone. I stepped back. Don't touch me. Her smile faltered. Ethan crossed his arms. So, he said calmly, let's stop pretending. What's behind the wall? Memories, I replied. My aunt scoffed. Enough drama, that house belongs to all of us. Whatever Grandma hid, it's family property. Family, I looked at each of them. The aunt who signed false documents. The brother who moved money offshore. The cousin who tried to bribe my contractor. The sister who filmed herself crying online while Grandma begged for water. She left it to me, I said quietly. She was manipulated, my aunt snapped. She was sick, she was clear, I replied, clear enough to document everything. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Document what? I pulled out my phone and played the first recording. My grandfather's voice, weak, confused, asking why his medication tasted different. Gasps filled the room. Kayla's face drained of color. My aunt lunged for my phone. That's fake. I stepped back again. Touch me, I said, my voice steady, and the next thing that plays is your confession. Silence fell like a blade. I looked at them, really looked, and realized something powerful. They were afraid, not of losing money, of being exposed. I loved her, I said softly. I carried her when she couldn't stand. I cleaned her when she couldn't move. I stayed when you disappeared. My voice hardened. You don't get to claim family now. Ethan swallowed. What do you want? I smiled for the first time since Grandma died. I want you to leave. They stared at me, stunned. And if you ever step foot in this house again, I continued, every document, every recording, every transaction goes public. Court, media, everywhere. My aunt's hands trembled. Kayla started crying, not from guilt, but fear. One by one, they backed away. When the door finally slammed shut behind them, the house went quiet again. But this time, it wasn't waiting, it was watching. I sank onto the floor, shaking not from weakness but from release. Grandma had been right, gold didn't bring them, truth did. If you're still here, subscribe, because the ending doesn't give mercy to those who don't deserve it. And this was only the beginning of how I decided what to do with the power she left me. The house didn't feel safe after they left, it felt exposed. Like a secret once whispered had now been screamed into the dark, and the dark had answered back. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the living room floor with my back against the wall, the steel chest locked again behind the hidden door, my phone charging beside me like a loaded weapon. Every sound outside made my heart jump. Every passing car felt like a warning. At 3:17 a.m., my phone vibrated. A message. From Ethan. You think this is over? I stared at the screen, calm settling over me in a way that felt unfamiliar and dangerous. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened a new email. I addressed it to 3 law firms, then to an investigative journalist whose work I'd followed for years, then to a secure digital vault service. I attached nothing, yet. I titled the draft, Insurance. By morning, the threats escalated. Calls from unknown numbers, emails pretending to be concerned, messages from relatives who hadn't spoken to me in years suddenly remembering my existence. You look tired, Ava. Stress isn't good for you. Let's meet and talk like adults. You don't know what you're dealing with. They weren't trying to take the treasure anymore. They were trying to take control. I drove to the house anyway. I always did. Fear doesn't disappear when you avoid it. It grows teeth. Inside the hidden room, I laid everything out, ledgers, recordings, documents on the stone table my grandmother had built herself. I listened to more of the audio files she'd recorded in secret over the years. Voices I recognized. Lies I remembered being told as truth. One recording made my hands go numb. My aunt's voice, cold and precise. If he doesn't sign, increase the dosage. Slowly, no one will question it. I turned it off. My grandmother hadn't just been preparing to protect me, she had been preparing for war, and she had chosen me to finish it. That afternoon, I received a knock at the door, not aggressive, not fake friendly, controlled. I checked the camera. A man in a dark coat stood alone, hands visible, posture calm, the same voice from the phone call, the unknown number. I opened the door, but not fully. "What do you want?" I asked. "To make sure you don't destroy yourself trying to destroy them," he replied. He introduced himself as a fixer, not a criminal, not law enforcement, a cleaner. "Someone paid to make problems disappear." "They hired you," I said. He nodded. "To scare you, not to hurt you." "And now?" I asked. "Now I'm here because they're panicking," he said honestly. "You're not reacting like a victim?" I studied his face. He wasn't threatening me, he was assessing me. "They think you're emotional," he continued. "Grief makes people sloppy. They assumed you'd either sell or break." "And now?" I asked again. "Now they're afraid you'll expose them." I stepped back and opened the door fully. "Good," I said. That was the moment I felt it shift. He blinked just once. I told him everything, not the treasure but the proof, the recordings, the documents, the will, the insurance plan I was building piece by piece. When I finished, he exhaled slowly. "You know," he said, "most people would have taken the money and disappeared." I looked at the hallway where my grandmother used to sit, her chair still facing the wall. "She didn't disappear," I replied. He nodded once. "Then here's my advice. Don't strike fast, strike clean." That night I made my move. I didn't go public. I went precise. I sent each family member a personalized message, one file each, just enough to remind them exactly what I had on them. To my aunt, the audio clip. To Ethan, the offshore transfer ledger. To Kayla, the forged signature document. No threats, just facts. The responses came within minutes. Panic, denial, bargaining, then silence. The next morning, lawyers started calling, not mine. The family was trying to negotiate. I ignored them. Instead, I activated my grandmother's final condition. The will had a clause none of them had noticed. If any beneficiary attempted to contest ownership or intimidate the inheritor, all remaining assets, including properties they currently lived in, would be frozen pending investigation. Their houses, their cars, their accounts. Locked. By noon, my aunt was calling me from a private number, her voice shaking. "You don't understand what you're doing," she whispered. "This will ruin lives." I thought of my grandmother, humiliated, weak, poisoned slowly by the people she loved. "I understand perfectly," I said. She cried, not for grandma, for herself. By evening, the fixer returned. "They're done," he said. "They'll never touch you again." I believed him, but belief wasn't enough. I walked into the hidden room one last time and opened the steel chest again. I stared at the treasure, gold, gems, wealth beyond imagination, and felt nothing. Then I looked at the folder, and felt everything. The final note from Grandma waited at the bottom. "You get to choose what justice looks like." I closed the chest. The choice wasn't about money, it was about legacy. If you're still listening, subscribe, because the final part isn't about revenge. It's about what happens after you win, and sometimes that's the hardest part of all. The silence after victory is louder than the war itself. When the last call stopped ringing, when the last lawyer's email went unanswered, when my family finally understood there was nothing left to threaten me with, the house felt different. Not haunted, not heavy, honest. I walked through every room slowly, touching the walls my grandmother once leaned on, the doorframes she held when pain bent her spine, the chair where she sat every evening facing the hidden wall like a soldier guarding a border no one else could see. I opened the hidden room one final time. The steel chest waited, unchanged. Billions in gold and stone sat quietly inside, powerful enough to rewrite any life. I didn't rush. Power earned through patience deserves patience in return. I sat on the stone floor and read my grandmother's letters again, everyone she'd written over the years and never sent. Letters to children who stopped listening. Letters to a husband she couldn't save. Letters to herself reminding her why silence was sometimes survival. One line broke me. I stayed alive long enough to make sure the right person would live free. She hadn't survived for revenge, she'd survived for release. I closed the chest. I didn't take the gold that day. Instead, I did something my family never expected. I told the truth, quietly, precisely, irreversibly. The documents went to court first, sealed, verified, undeniable. Charges followed, investigations opened, deals were offered and rejected. Names that once held power began appearing in headlines for all the wrong reasons. My aunt's empire collapsed under the weight of its own lies. My brother's accounts were frozen across borders. My sister disappeared from social media the moment questions turned serious. They lost everything they tried to steal, not because I chased revenge, but because truth doesn't need to run. It waits. Months passed. The fixer never returned. He didn't need to. His job was done the moment fear changed sides. I renovated the house not to modernize it, but to honor it. I kept the hidden room intact. I turned the front rooms into something my grandmother would have loved. A care center. Quiet, clean, warm, a place for people abandoned when they became inconvenient. I funded it myself, slowly, deliberately, using only a fraction of what the chest held. Nurses who cared instead of counted hours. Rooms where dignity didn't depend on money. Beds where no one had to beg to be carried to the bathroom. I named it after her, not her family name. Her first name, because legacy isn't blood. It's behavior. One evening as I locked up the center, I found a woman sitting alone on the front steps. Frail, afraid, forgotten. She looked up at me and whispered, "Do I belong here?" I heard my grandmother's voice in her question. "Yes," I said, "you're safe." That night I went back to the hidden room and opened the steel chest again. I removed one item, a small envelope. Inside was my grandmother's final letter, one I'd been avoiding. "If you're reading this, it means you didn't become like them. I didn't leave you gold to make you rich. I left you truth to make you free. Take what you need, leave what you don't, and never confuse love with obligation." I cried. Not from pain, from relief. I sealed the chest and locked the door. Some treasures don't need to be spent. Years later, people would ask me how I survived betrayal like that, how I didn't let it harden me. I always gave the same answer. I was loved correctly once, that was enough. My family never contacted me again. They didn't need to. Their absence became the quiet proof that justice had done its job. The house still stands. So does the truth. And every night when I turn off the lights and the halls fall silent, I swear I can feel her presence, not watching, not guarding, resting. If this story stayed with you, subscribe, because some secrets aren't meant to shock. They're meant to teach. And the greatest revenge is becoming the person they never thought you could be.